Coming up next on MCN, the McAllen Cable Network, the Development Corporation of McAllen from McAllen City Hall. The Development Corporation appointed by the City Commission is charged with making recommendations on how to use money that's been raised from the half-cent sales tax that was approved by McAllen voters on May the 3rd, 1997. The recommendation is made to the City Commission. They make the final decision. And now, the Development Corporation of McAllen.
I'll call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Development Corporation of McAllen. It's Monday, July 19th, 2021. First item on the agenda.
First item is to administer the oath of office to our newest member.
Who does it here? I should have worn a tie.
You should have.
So just raise your hand and repeat after me.
I,
State your name.
Javier Villalobos,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
execute
the duties
of the office
of
of Director of Economic Development
of the state of Texas
State of Texas
and will,
and will,
to the best
to
of
the
my
best of
ability,
my ability,
preserve,
preserve, protect,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution
the
and laws
Constitution and laws
of the United
of the
States
United States
and of this state.
and of the state.
So help me
So
God.
I'm official.
Next item on the agenda is the election of officers. I think we have chair and vice chair available. Do we have a quorum? We do, right? We have four members.
And we do have yourself as the current vice chairman. The current chairman is no longer with us. It was former Mayor Darling. And we do also need to elect a secretary, which is generally speaking city staff.
Yeah, so if I could just elaborate, Local Government Code 505 prescribes that the president, chairman of the corporation, and the secretary actually be elected by the board. Historically, city manager staff has served as secretary. We can do that today, or if you are more comfortable, we can put the election of secretary on for the next meeting. If we elect to do that next meeting, I do recommend that at least Sarah be appointed as secretary for purposes of the meeting.
So for today, it's chair and vice chair, and then we can also appoint Sarah as secretary.
To serve as secretary for the meeting would be my recommendation, and then bring that back for a formal vote next time.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to make a motion to nominate you for Chair of the Development Corp.
I'd like to ask the mayor if he's interested in.
Actually, I would love it if you could serve, and then I would amend that motion to include Sebby if he wants to be vice.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'm trying to delegate as much as possible.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
And then I would recommend you taking up a motion just to appoint Sarah to serve as secretary of this
Yes.
meeting.
Is there
So
a
moved.
motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held May the 6th, 2021. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes? If so, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I wasn't here, so.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a review of the financial reports.
There was a second set of minutes, the joint meeting held on Tuesday, June 8th as well. We need to do those as well.
Okay. Okay, so we're also approving the minutes of the meeting held Tuesday, June 8th. I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
You go this time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we're on to the review of the financial reports.
Okay, good afternoon, board members. We'll start out with the balance sheet. As of June 30th, we had total assets of $17,769,664. Liabilities were $487,728, and we had a fund balance of $17,281,936. On the next page is the statement of revenues and expenses for the month ending June 30th. Total revenue was $14,700,403. Total expenses was $8,152,185. We had other financing sources uses of $4,022,116. That is basically was in and out for the bonds that we refunded, the sales tax revenue bonds. And then we also had a transfer in from, I want to say, the general fund for the CARES Act funding. So we have a total of revenue over expenses of $10,575,334. If, do you have any questions in the back? We've got some detail behind that of the revenues and all the expenses, by project number.
Can you just tell me on the accounts payable, what is that?
Those are anything that's pending as of June, the invoices that came in, but they just haven't been paid out yet.
For December?
No, for as of June.
Okay. And what would the major portion of that be?
I'd have to look.
Is there like a large payable, or is it just,
They could be construction projects, primarily, I think those are.
so there's nothing that stands out?
Oh, no.
But typically, it seems like those are short-term liabilities, right? So
Yes,
they're typically
yes.
probably covered within 90 days.
Yeah, most of the time they're paid every week.
Yeah.
So when this was done, it could have been anything that was just submitted last week, because they don't get into AP system until we receive the invoice. So like Michelle said, if they're construction invoices, still has to go through the engineers to review before it gets paid and matched up and approved to go. But those are paid within 30 days. I can look to see what it makes up if you like.
No, I would just, I was just asking on the amount, what it was comprised of.
Yeah, it's normal, because we have a lot of construction projects
I
going on.
understand, okay.
And also the social service agencies, some of them bill us monthly or quarterly, so those would be a large component.
Any other questions on the financials? Just had a question on one of the schedules, which is the Daffodil Taylor to Ware Road project. It looks like there's been some money spent. This is for the engineering work.
Mhm. That's
Do you know how far along we are in the engineering?
Ed, can you answer that for us?
The engineering portion, they still have right of way to the water.
Okay.
Part of the process of that, the time burning that the actual table will extend. I can get you a better percentage of how much it will be,
Okay,
and I'll get that.
that'd be great. Any other questions? Thanks for the report.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. Consideration and approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $2,681,246 to fund the new Parks Administration facility.
Move to approve.
Second.
Can I ask a question real quick? Well, was this already, can you just tell me, was this already approved for that? I mean, what is, give me a breakdown.
The
Because
project,
it's a
the
big
construction
amount, so
project, yes.
Y'all might know, but
Yeah.
course.
The construction project was put out to bid, and with construction prices being the way they are, they came in significantly over bid. So we had several options that were presented to City Commission when we looked at the award of the contract, which included just doing the parks, just doing the metro side of the facility, and they would cover their shortage, which is about $2.95 million. The parks side of it was about $2.68 million over budget. And the commission at that time wanted to look at going ahead with the construction of all of it, subject to a budget amendment by the Development Corporation.
So technically, the original amount was what, 8.2? Is that, and then it came in at
It
that
came in at
overage,
12.
and that's what we're looking at?
Right.
Yes,
For
Yes.
both facilities?
for both.
Right, but the Development Corporation would only cover the general fund portion of the overage.
So we're basically having to agree to the price because of the cost. There's just nothing we can do
Yeah.
about that right now.
And we don't
Is that all
expect
it
it to
is?
come down anytime soon.
Yeah.
Is that all it is?
Yes. Yes.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next item, deliberation and consideration for funding of outside agencies.
Okay, this is the agencies that, the nonprofit agencies that the Development Corporation typically funds on a year-to-year basis. There is a chart in here that shows you what the allocation that was approved for last year, which is in the allocation, the second column of the spreadsheet. That's what they received from the Development Corporation last year. What they requested this year is in the third column. And in the last column that has numbers in it, that is the Community Development Board's recommendation. Because as you recall, they also review these agencies and they make a recommendation that you can either accept or change or however you see fit. And our chairperson, Ms. Gabby, is here along with our CD director to answer any questions that you might have regarding these recommendations.
Is there a deadline on these? Are we under the gun to approve it or not?
They do have to be in the budget process, but it's not like a huge hurry.
So basically, the recommendation y'all are making is within the budget or within what we did last year? Because I don't really have any issue with what they recommended unless anybody else.
Actually, I don't have any issues either regarding the amounts, but there's an issue that arises with a different one that I'd like to meet with council separately before we take action, because I think it might affect something else.
Well, one of the
But I'm
questions,
like the numbers and everything.
Yeah.
that's-
Well, I mean, there were a couple that I would like to bring up. I know,
we can go through them individually if you like.
you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I
In
think it's really
general,
prudent.
I was thinking maybe the board, how we can answer from the board's perspective. I understood last year, those significant cuts to most agencies last year in the previous, when we did this, let's say 12 months ago. Given sort of, I think, our positioning now and a much more positive outlook, the CD committee surprisingly still went down, even if very slightly, right? Let's say almost equal.
We did. We kind of just went with a general number. We do know, there are tough times right now. We didn't know what the budget was looking like, so we did a slight decrease just in case there was a lower amount.
Okay.
that was one of the things I wanted to ask. So I know last year we approved or allocated $2,515,000. Do you know what the amount was prior to that?
So essentially, we've been taking a 6% reduction over the last couple of years.
Okay.
It's been a 6%.
6% per year or 6%?
6% reduction in total.
Okay.
But it's not, I mean, not based off of,
Not across the board. It was off of the total allocation.
okay, okay.
On some of the decreases, have you had any of the agencies just call and say,
So the only agency that we had received information from had been Boys and Girls Club, because they thought they were going to have to close. And then they were able to retain their facilities being open. They, as you are probably aware, were able to sanitize, and they were actually one of the leaders in the nation. They were actually training other Boys and Girls Club on how to maintain their doors being open. Those were the only organizations that really came to us and we thought we were gonna have to recapture some money. They didn't do it. The rest of them were able to utilize their money in a manner that transitioned from in-person services to some type of telecommunication, whether it was online programming, whether it was something like that. So they were utilizing their money just in a different facet. We didn't have anyone else asking us for additional money at that point.
So as far as the total budget, is the 2,501,000, it's discretionary. I mean, we
Yes.
took it down by 6% based on, you know, previous recommendation, but it's not necessarily what we are required to do,
That's correct.
right?
Right, so the Development Corporation has, let me put it the other way. The CD committee usually is a little bit more conservative because you normally have a better idea what your budget's going to be and how you have the opportunity to increase as you see fit.
Okay.
So the
So we
CD
have- That
committee
makes
is a
sense.
little bit, yes, is a
We
little
have
bit
a
more
little wiggle
fiscally
room.
conservative.
Okay.
Yes.
I know it was 2515 last year, 2501 recommended this year.
Correct.
What was the total in 2019?
I would have to
Don't recall?
calculate that.
Okay. It was just for reference, it's really not that important.
That would give us kind of a base, you know, last year being a.
Like what they were doing before we started sort of trying to
Last year being
reduce.
a pandemic year, we were very worried about, you know, what the budget was gonna look like. You know, 2019 was a relatively normal year in terms of our.
Yeah, based on
economy,
historical.
So, you know, so anyway, I think we have maybe, you know, 50,000 or so to work with, but at any rate, should we
Oh,
go
yeah,
down?
whatever we want to.
Down the list, was there gonna be any kind of pre-discussion?
You can tell me if there's anything on
Wanna go
here
one by
that
one?
you guys want us to
Okay.
review or
Okay.
discuss what our opinion was.
Got it.
It's up to you all.
Well,
Well,
like
let's
on
go
lit
down.
fund, I was just gonna ask, on that one, I might have, I mean, we're going down on that one.
Right.
And so, is there any particular issue that we have with them? Because what they're doing is good for the community, so
Correct.
that
So-
might be one.
So that one, we kind of went back and forth on. The reason we did a decrease is because they do not have any local representation here as far as their board goes. I think everybody's pretty much northern state, not here in the valley. And then the second one, was just basically, we had a question for them that was not answered, and that was what the reinvestment in our community is. Because we know that these funds go to Lift Run as a whole, but we wanted to know what comes back to our community. And so that was kind of where we did a decrease, just for the lack of board and the lack of knowledge of what actually comes back to McAllen.
I believe we asked that question, I'm sorry, Omar, when we met, when we had that meeting with that hearing with I mean, we asked about that, because we've asked repeatedly every year about local representation, which really and I believe she said that they had somebody that was coming on board. So, because, you know, this is our money, our taxpayers' money, and so we should have a local voice on the board, and I know that we brought that up. So, but I believe she answered that they were going to address that.
They have a local office, right?
Yes.
They do
Yes.
have a local
On
office.
10th, right there on
Local
10th.
office.
Yes.
I thought when Lift Fund, when we partnered with them originally, they would, and Isaac, you may have the answer to this, but they would bring us the requests and we would fund on a per item basis. And it wasn't just the money given over to Lift Fund, because we wanted to make sure it was strictly McAllen-based.
That is correct. They do actually provide us with a listing of the business, and then they give us, we essentially pay the interest on their loans. They're
Correct.
provided at 0% interest.
So-
So we are given that information at the time, so it's not like they've received the whole amount at one lump sum.
And the monies aren't going outside of the city of McAllen.
No.
They're
Those
not.
certainly are McAllen-based
Yeah.
businesses. No, but the question has been, so when the money gets reinvested and those loans are paid into their system, how does that portion of the money then come back to subsidize either additional loans so that DCMI would not have to continue to supplement the funding source?
It's not like a revolving fund.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was never
Well-
meant to be that.
But they're lending out the same dollar once it's repaid. So I think the question there is, from the principal that you're receiving, how is that translating to reinvestment or maybe loans outside of our program funds going into the community?
Well, the principal's coming back to,
I can tell you, when it was first implemented, that wasn't really a consideration that was put in place. It was more of a mechanism
To help.
in order to help the small businesses here in the city of McAllen. And since they had the instruments and the process is in place to distribute those monies on an interest-free basis. Figured they were the best partnership for something like that. And since they also teamed up with the SBA, that was probably the best avenue for outreach.
So basically, if we took it down to 100, then would be, because we're looking at 15 businesses, so it would take it down to 7 that would receive assistance?
The average that they're having.
I mean, pro rata, it sounds about right.
Yeah, it would depend on the request amount, but yes.
Yeah.
So maybe on that
Because
one,
their
we
loan
might have a
amount,
little bit of.
their loan amounts
wiggle room.
vary, so it depends on the loans the loan requests
Right,
that
but
they
they're
get.
asking for 200, that's based on 15, so we're taking it down to half of that.
Well, they ran out
My
this
question is,
year.
is
How
there a
soon
problem?
did they run out?
Why we're slicing it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they are out of money just yet. I would have to verify that one.
I thought at the last meeting they had mentioned they had just run out.
No, I'm sorry, you are correct. They were
Which-
saying they were in the process of either finalizing their last loan or they had just issued it.
Probably would have been then in June. So there's still
3 months.
3 months. So,
But
yeah.
do
What do you-
people even know about it? I mean, if it's 200,000, you would think that it'd be gone quick.
Oh, I think
They do.
they have a longer list of applicants than they're able to service from last time that we talked to them. So the need is definitely there.
Well, then if the need is, and that's kind of what I'm getting into, if the need is there, why are we only doing 200,000?
No, they're
Right now-
requesting, we're
Yeah,
we're
they requested that.
Community
Yeah, we're
development
with,
is recommending 100.
Yeah.
Last year, we did 125, so that was.
And that was in a tougher year, we did 125.
Yeah.
When it first started out, it was at 250,000, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, really?
And
Okay,
it's- and
we're
it's
at
been-
what?
100.
The numbers are all super
This
small.
last year was
We did-
200,000.
We did
last year.
125 last year in a tough year,
Or 120.
and the committee cut it down to 100 this year.
Okay.
So we can
Well, that's
increase it
kinda
if we'd
what I'm
like.
saying. Why don't we increase it, because it's been tough.
I would agree with that. I think
Yeah,
that we
how
should.
much
Just-
you guys want to
Who
go?
wants to propose an amount? At minimum, last year's about a 125, but we can go
That's what
higher.
we gave 125. They're asking for 200, that's for 15? So.
I would think after the pandemic, and we're trying to get businesses back,
Right.
and we're trying to get payrolls going and sales tax, that if the money's there to do 200.
Give them the
it's
request.
It's probably well worth it.
However, I think we do need to make sure we have a local person on the board, because we've talked about that repeatedly, and I don't think we've ever had that addressed.
And how are we doing as far as recouping back the amounts?
It's not recouped.
Not
So
to-
it's just a total,
We pay the interest
We
rate
pay the
on
interest.
behalf of the loan. Yeah, I'm sorry, on behalf of the business.
It's an interest buy down.
It's the interest by down. We pay the interest. So all, the entity is responsible for paying the principal.
So they lend
So
the
the good thing
money.
about Lift Fund is it's not a blank check. It does, as they get the loans and as they request those interest payments, that's when we apply the funds.
They lend the money.
They lend the money.
We're buying down the interest down. So
Correct.
it's not like we're not okay.
Yeah.
The principal is
So
not
we
like
pick it up.
being lent out, essentially. I mean, it's their money that they're lending out. So.
Lift fund, yes,
Okay.
it's at their discretion.
So is 200,000 what we're looking at?
I'll agree to 200,000. I'll make a motion to make our recommendation a $200,000, a full request fulfillment.
But we'd like to go ahead and like to have a local board member. If you could just relay that to them once again, I second that motion.
Are we gonna take these individually or?
Yeah, probably, because, well.
One by one.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, 200,000 is the recommendation there. South Texas College, they, we funded them 260 last time. The board is recommending another 260 this year, although the request was 500.
I'm okay with that.
You know, I do know that the types of workers that these plants use are the ones that are probably in least supply, biggest demand, these types of employees. You know, South Texas College has always been a strong partner in providing these trainings.
Yeah,
I think coming into the
They're a
current.
partner, and they're great. The only thing is, remember, they're also right now waiving tuition for students because they have a lot of federal funds coming in. So we gotta kind of balance it out.
And
Because otherwise, Love to help out all the time, but.
Yeah,
No, of
and
course.
they also have the ability to tax people as we do, so. I don't know that they mentioned that they're really a separate.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same as the school
department
part.
Or agency, but
Yeah.
nonetheless.
I think I'm okay with that. I think
You'll say
the
260?
questions we've had before is, their numbers are a little bit funny to understand, and we have, like Michelle, you recall, we've asked them to break it out, and we still don't quite get the right numbers, but I think the recommendation is okay.
260? Everybody okay with
Yeah.
260?
I think so.
Okay, we'll go with 260. We'll make a final recommendation at the end.
Yeah,
Comfort House,
That's good.
I think that stays stable.
Yeah.
Looks like it's not
it's been
changing.
100 across the board,
doing a
so
good
we
job.
okay with staying at 100?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And Commissioner Tanya, if you have any comments, let us know at any time. The next one, Affordable Homes of South Texas. Any comments, suggestions, questions?
It looks like they matched the request.
Mhm.
They have real good accounting of their projects. I think the committee's recommendation is fine.
I'm surprised they're not asking for more. Okay, so I think that's good.
Was there rehab fund?
Well, there's quite a bit of that. There's a lot of need for that, so.
Yeah.
And some replacements too.
Some replacements. Okay, so we're sticking with the
236.5.
recommendation there is 236.5. Okay. The next one, Vida. Community Development recommended 400,000. Last year, the allocation was 425, so it's a little bit of a decrease.
I guess this is the one I'd ask you, Yvette, have you had any kind of feedback from the agency?
We do not actually release these to the agencies.
But they've had quite a big decrease over the past, say, 5 years.
Yes, ma'am.
So over the years that we've been bringing that down, have you ever had any, like,
So,
they're gonna make it shut down?
I think they understood some of the concerns that have been brought before the board and that we had done during our monitoring visits. They have since addressed those. So I think they definitely have been more reasonable and accountable for the funding that has been placed before them. So basically what the committee did, and I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, but it was essentially, they told us it was an average of about 4,000 per student, and we know that they're gonna do at least 100 to 115 students, so that's the way the committee came up with that number.
Correct. So our point was we were looking at it from McAllen numbers and kind of justified what they were requesting based off the numbers they were saying that they were servicing. And that's how we arrived at the 400.
And so you think about 100 of them will be from McAllen?
That's
Yes.
what they provided, that about 100 are from McAllen. And their average cost is at 4,000 a student, so.
Okay.
Okay, what numbers are y'all
I mean,
comfortable
if
with?
400 is what's being recommended, and I think they're not really,
Well, I wouldn't say that
they've been able to work with the decreases we've been doing, is what I'm trying to say, so.
most definitely, but, again, it is another $25,000 decrease if that's something that this
Just wanna
board
keep
would
it.
But
like to
have we been
implement.
checking on administrative cost on?
Yes,
these?
most definitely. That is something that we made sure we were aware
They're
of.
pretty good, or they're.
There's a cap, right, at the 25?
So at this point, yes, there is a 25% cap that they can use for administrative cost.
From our
So-
funding.
I'm sorry?
From our funding.
Okay,
From our funding.
but from our funding, but what about if they use our funding, they do 25% and all the rest of the funding from other municipalities can go otherwise? Because I remember some of these nonprofits, they were so top heavy that a lot of the money given to them was going more for administration than.
So
And
yes,
purpose.
most of the organizations that receive unrestricted funding usually goes towards administration, because anything that is restrictive tends to be programmatic in nature. So if they give you a grant, it's usually for something specific, and those funding like this tends to be unrestricted, tends to pay for the administrative cost.
Correct.
So it.
Correct, but do we know how much their total administration cost is compared to, just us restricting that you can only use 25% for administrative costs?
So we would be able to back into it from the information that they have provided for us on the applications that they give us, and then we can also substantiate it from the audit point of view, because they do submit their financial
So
statements as
we'd be
well.
able to see that it's less than 25% their total administrative costs.
Well, I can't guarantee that their total administrative cost is 25%. We maximize the McAllen dollars at the 25%
And that's what I'm
administrative
talking
cost.
about. That's what I'm talking about, because they can be utilizing us for that purpose, where they pick up administrative costs with all the other cities. And I don't like that at all.
Do they have to prove that the administrative cost that they're submitting is based on services provided to only McAllen residents? I guess, do they have one person dedicated only?
No,
they
that's not
don't.
that's not the way
Okay,
it
so
works.
then that's when it gets a
And,
little-
and as far as one person dedicated to McAllen, then that's a programmatic cost, and so that goes in the 75% kind of category. The 25% category is really more for the executive director, their bookkeeper, their clerical staff, maybe office space, rent, copiers, things like that. But if it was somebody who was assisting the student, then they would be paid out of kind of that 75% of the funding.
And if they're
availability.
committing to 100 students, irregardless of whether we're covering more of their administrative costs, they're still going to have to come up with money to cover the McAllen students to the tune of what we've contributed to them. So it should equal out in the end, depending on what we might look at is just how heavy the agency is overall on administrative costs. I think that would answer your question.
Well, the last time around, we did bring them down significantly. I mean, it'd be rough to continue to bring them down, but what do you all think?
Well, last year it was 425.
The request was 550. Last year, we did 425.
They are projecting 100 to 115 students. So that 15 students would essentially be another $40,000, $60,000. So recognizing that, you know, there is a range.
Do they spend their money every year?
Yes, yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not a matter of them not.
So do we want to go a little
Well,
higher then, or?
I would give them the benefit of the doubt that they could do the 115 students. We did cut them back a little bit last year in a tougher year, and at minimum at that, but I'd be okay doing 440.
How much?
440, which would cover the 115 students.
Is there a way we could stipulate it so if they don't do 115 students, say they only do 100, that we're able to claw back or reserve the funds for the 15 that weren't,
Yes.
that did not go through the program?
So we put it in the contract, and then they get paid upon proof that they have provided the service. So it wouldn't have to be a clawback. It would be, we pay them as they provide the service.
And just to let you know, the 4,000 is on average, so they do have some that are a little bit more expensive and some that are a little less. And so it really would be dependent on the 115, on what they actually cost, not necessarily that they are 4,000 a student. So that's kind of their target is between 100 and 115. They average between probably about 90 and 110 on an annual basis. I don't think they would have a problem getting to the 115.
Okay. So they can service more than 115 if they
And
were
they
able
have
to.
in the
If it fits within the
past.
budget.
They have in the
Yeah.
past. So we have,
Okay. But
their
just not
bar
85.
has been about 85 before with a bit more money, and they were still able to hit those 85 and get too close to 100 and still need I think it was about $100,000 at the time, which was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Do we get a copy of their budget?
Yes.
Yes, and their audit.
Yes.
Do we get a copy or contract with the executive director, or whoever that may be?
Like an employment contract?
Right.
No, we don't normally request that.
Well, maybe we should. Because that's, the reason I'm bringing this up is I remember a few years where an executive director of nonprofit being paid 200-something thousand. And that's, you know, they're asking people for money or other entities, and then they're spending for an executive director about 200,000. And that was taking a lot of the budget, and that concerns me with these type of matters.
I think we've asked for that in the past.
You might want
Yes.
you might want to consider doing that on the higher thresholds and not be punitive to the smaller agencies that possibly don't even have that
Sure.
in place.
No,
So
but that's-
we can be reasonable in requesting that. But you said 440, Sebi? I mean,
Yes.
I'm good with that, Omar. I mean, anybody else?
So move then.
440? Okay. 440. We'll go to the next one. Swing Street, Big Band. Got a lot of questions on this one. So 5,000 is what we've allocated in the past, and the recommendation again is 5,000. Can you give us a little summary on this one? I know it came to us for a particular reason.
So,
What's-
yes, they actually perform at the Performing Arts Center. It is headed by a couple of individuals. We actually have not expended any of the current year's money. We do have a contract that is signed, but they have not been able to provide us with the $12.95. So even though we've been provided invoices, we're not at the point of paying them because they haven't complied with all the contractual requirements. They're a small organization, and so it's kind of difficult to get to meet with them. They did not show up to the hearing that day, so any of the questions that the committee or DCMI Board of Directors had, remained unanswered.
Well, I think COVID got in the way, because wasn't this a startup when they first requested funds? And
They had been doing small performances, but yes,
so they never have drawn the funds that were allocated or
not the
awarded?
current years.
Okay. I mean,
Any other comments, thoughts?
I say we hold up and,
You want to go zero on this one? What did you say?
I say we hold up or go zero, or
Oh, I don't mind approving the minimal 5,000. I mean, they're still subject to the accountability of providing the proper documentation, contracts, tax forms. You know,
They
they didn't
haven't-
get last year's money, so even if we approve it,
We're
They-
basically reallocating.
yeah, we're
it's a
reallocating.
carryover,
I mean,
yes, of that funding. When we first saw this, it was a
It's a
little bit
minimal amount.
unusual to have this type of a request out of this, pocket of funds.
it is.
but why would we put in another 5Gs if they didn't even use the other 5Gs? If they didn't use
Well,
it, they can utilize.
they provided the
it.
invoices
They
for it,
have
right?
submitted invoices
Well,
for
yeah.
our consideration, but because they have not met all the contractual thresholds yet, we have not released payment on them.
For the original 5Gs.
For the
Right.
original, yes.
They've
currently
expended
funded
some of the
through
money, but
September
they
30th.
they can't get reimbursed until we have their $12.95 and other documentation needed.
And in good faith, I would reapprove it to let them try to get the reimbursements or continue doing what they do.
Omar?
The smallest amount on our
So we have
list.
5,000. What do y'all, where were you at, Mayor? What were you-
Zero.
Well, no,
Zero.
actually, if they're not using it, I just,
You were kind of at zero? and-
no, but
But they
then-
are
but
using
then
it.
They are
just haven't
using
use-
it, right, we just
But
haven't.
they just haven't complied, fulfilled
Correct.
their obligations
Yeah.
regarding the other.
I think if they fail to comply for a second year in a row, then
Yeah.
it would probably have to get
That's a good-
pulled.
that's a good
Okay, so
point.
you want to just go
Good way to look at
5,000
it.
again, and we'll
Okay.
see if they.
Don't move for 5Gs.
Okay, perfect. Then,
They gotta get their paperwork in order.
Yes, sir.
please.
Definitely.
The next one, Lower Grand Valley Community, those are the El Meglano plan.
That's correct.
Okay. So the allocation last year was 230, the recommendation now is 250. Seems like we're going up a little, just maybe, this is medical
In light of
services.
COVID,
and
yes.
It's very
Yes.
much needed in this time.
They
I see it
had
going
an
up from
increase
last
in
year,
patients. Yeah, they had
I'm
an
okay
And
increase.
with
it's-
that, 250.
almost at the request. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you okay?
So move
Yeah,
to
I mean,
approve.
I think on this one, we had also asked year after year if they were gonna do services on Saturdays, because some people can't go to the doctor or whatever. And she said that they had surveyed patients and that they didn't want to they didn't want Saturday services. So they were just gonna open late.
But they preferred late nights,
They
yes.
prefer late. So I just want to make a comment that at least they extended services.
Yes.
Now, on this one, was there something going on with their lease that came into play with anything here, or the lease at the building
So
they're in?
it did, but that had been taken care of previously. So, and it really didn't have to do with the funding from this board. They had just subleased an area of the building that they probably should not have done at the time.
Okay.
As I understand it, legal had taken care of whatever needed to be done.
Well, I just want to make sure that they are actually offering late hours, because I think a lot of these folks would need that instead
Yeah.
of shorter service hours, so.
We can verify that. Okay, so we're okay with 250 on that? All right. Move on to the next one, Boys and Girls Club of McAllen.
I'm good with 250,
Everybody okay with 250 on that?
so move to approve.
Okay, 250 on that one. The next one, McAllen Economic Development Corporation. This is one where last year we reduced it to 900,000. And I think some of it had to do with some travel that was not gonna be taking place, which we all know that there was some restrictions last year with travel. And so, the request this year is $1,039,000. Community Development Board is recommending 900,000. I'm curious as to why the Community Development Board didn't recommend a higher amount. going with
Again,
the same
we were just
money.
being conservative with not
Okay.
knowing what our budget was this year. We didn't want to overextend. We didn't know.
I think travel gets a little expensive. I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of.
What was the
travel.
amount? Do you remember the travel amount? It was like
It was like-
90,000.
I think it was like 50 or so that they had.
And they may not even be able to travel anyway. I
Right.
mean, things, you don't know how they are,
So we
so.
can always amend it later.
You might be right, but they might not spend it.
Okay.
I would think there's, one of the most important things moving forward is gonna be the work that McAllen Economic Development Corporation does. I think we're gonna see hyper competition in bringing businesses to McAllen compared to, some of the growing cities around us, all the way down to Brownsville. To match the same number that we matched last year, given how strong their books are, and I think how meticulous they are, I would really like to fund their full request. They're one of the ones I have the most faith in with the work that they do, and I think the return to McAllen is significant. I don't think they're going to use the funds.
This is all
They use it
administrative.
wrongfully, I think.
No, not wrongfully.
Why don't
I
we
think
do about
loosely.
950? Should they need some more later on,
Okay.
more travel? We just do it.
Do you remember what the travel amount was of it in the budget?
Off
in
the top of
request?
my head, no, I don't know. I will say that last year, Mayor Darling recommended a similar suggestion, that midway or three-quarters of the way through the year, we would reevaluate this particular organization.
So
What's more necessary?
I mean, the 950 is, not a real big difference from the request, so I'm okay with 950, 925.
I'm okay with 950 then,
950.
and leave it open for them to bring a second request for travel needs.
So move to approve 950.
Okay, 950, great.
And then that is the last one. We left the bottom number just so you can see the total.
Okay, so
funding
is there an
sources.
Easter seal?
No,
No,
it's
that
not
was
an
a previous.
application.
So when
It
you
was just-
okay.
It was just to show the full budget that had been provided last year.
So, I'll entertain a motion to approve all of the items as we noted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Can we have a revised worksheet? of
Yes,
that?
ma'am, you will receive it.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Yeah,
We
thanks for
appreciate
the
y'all.
help. That's it?
No further
We just need
business?
to
No
adjourn.
further business. We stand adjourned.
4:46.
Thank you.